back everyone, and it's time to go balls deep. Today we are discussing chapter 310, which involves Deku trying to master one for all as a vigilante in a decimated society. Yeah, I'm pretty excited because this chapter was flames. The last users of one for all have been revealed, and we learned a lot more regarding the lore of the quirk. In chapter 309, we learned that All Might has become Deku's butler, and he has been the backbone to his new transformation and drip. All Might has been supplying intel and gear for Deku to support his training before his destined battle against Shigaraki. All Might has become like Alfred to Deku's Batman, and he supplied him a new mid gauntlet from America. And of course, it's not from Japan, so the gauntlet is called mid. You know, remember, Japan is the whole world in anime, fam.
So true.
The gauntlet is made for endurance and should reinforce Deku's body when using one for all. However, it won't be able to withstand 100% of the power, which makes Deku 100% smash off limits until he meets, you know who, Araraka again. You know what I'm saying? That was the perfect setup, bruh. Obviously, I meant Shigaraki though.
Bruh.
Hawks informs us that Deku is the biggest weapon in their arsenal for their plan against the villains. If Deku is not trained or supported properly, they would all fail. So it's up to All Might to be his father figure and guide him whilst his deadbeat dad that banged his mom dipped from the picture, fam. Like, where the hell is Deku's dad in a situation like this? Why hasn't his mom mentioned him at all? She just learned the boy has left UA and the fate of the world is left on his shoulders, but his dad still doesn't show up? Bruh, talk about a trash father.
Son of a bitch!
Deku left UA because Shigaraki can locate him at any moment and he doesn't want anyone else to get hurt. All Might starts to cry and becomes his butler, whilst his mom gives him permission to pursue his dream since she is the one that inspired Deku to be who he is. Deku learns from Gran Torino that killing someone can be another way to save someone, and that he should never forget that whilst he handed him his new dripped out cape. Now what he's trying to say is, think of an analogy here. Think of a dog when you put them down. When a dog is suffering, you put them down to put them out of their misery. Or think about a serial killer. When you take them out, at least you're saving other people and future events, right? So this topic is being explored a lot more, where we have to consider Deku's moral compass, because it's being challenged by the villains and the story now. Where does Deku lie? Where does his mentality lie? What type of hero does he want to be? Does he want to be like Batman and Spider-Man, or does he want to be like an anti-hero type figure where he would kill the villains? Chapter 310 starts off at night, as Deku has become the embodiment of Batman and Spider-Man. The civilians seem to be on night watch for villains and mistake this giant specimen of a woman for a villain and start attacking her. The woman isn't given a chance to explain herself at all, as it's trying to highlight how on edge society has become, where humans have lost trust with one another due to how the peaceful culture they once knew has completely crumbled. Given the current world climate with villains out and about, hero reputation and reliance on them at an all-time low, civilians have resorted to their own hands. The vigilante civilians completely ignore the girl, stating that she is probably just pretending to be a civilian to lower their guard. He begins charging up his mega buster cannon and fires it at the giant lady. But at that moment, Deku, he zooms in, deflects the beam just in time to save the lady, and tells everybody to stay calm, bitches. All these new chapters basically keep telling the readers, listen, the crying Deku, the wimp Deku, the Deku you used to hate and meme, that guy is dead, bruh. This is dripped out Deku. This is Chad Deku, bruh. The lady finally managed to explain that she initially chose not to evacuate, assuming that all the problems would die down over time while she stayed at home, which was considered one of the safer areas. But once all the casualties around her emerge and rise, she felt it was time to head for the hero school shelters, and it was at this moment she got attacked. The lady starts to break down in tears, stating that she was scared. Then our boy, Deku, floats up and holds an umbrella whilst comforting her, stating that she isn't alone. She asks if things would ever return back to normal, and Deku reassures her that things will, because he's the boss man now. Boss man Deku. That's his nickname now. Yo, I'm gonna call him Boss Man Deku from now on. That sounds kind of cool. Now, I'm just saying, right, another thing I want to talk about since this chapter brought it up. But basically, if I was in MHA and I looked like a washing machine or a freaking plunger, just end my life, fam. All for one, please fix me. Get rid of my quirk, fam. I would believe in his ideology. Don't lie to me. That's why I think All for One is kind of an understandable guy. Like, remember that dude that looked like a glue stick? How do you even give birth to that? How do you take a shit? How do you play PS5? Like, is it just me that thinks about these questions? Seriously, like, is it just me? Admit it, guys. Let me know in the comments by typing sheesh. So as Deku is escorting the girl to safety, All Might shows up in his Batmobile. He shows concern for Deku, but Deku just asks him to take the Fury girl to the evacuation center, and he says that he can't stay there and starts heading out. All Might stops Deku and tells him that he brought a bento box for him with a katsudon pork in it, right? Now if you didn't know, this was Deku's favorite food, but I'm just saying it's haram. You know, we're doing Ramadan out here, we keep everything halal.
Alhamdulillah, I keep it halal all the time.
One thing I want to mention is how Deku keeps wanting to leave and walk this path alone. When Shigaraki came out of hibernation, his target was Deku through the use of his search quirk, which he stole from Shiritoko. With the search quirk, Shigaraki can show up at any time to fight Deku once more. And as we saw in round 1 of their bout, everyone around Deku got severely injured and almost died. Bakugo got skewered like a kebab just to save Deku. And we all know Gachan is the most precious thing to him. Deku wants to be left alone because he blames himself for people around him who got hurt. One for all, and the morals compels him to save others, not to be alone to be saved whilst endangering his friends. That's one of the reasons Deku is in such a hurry to leave All Might's presence, because he does not want his sensei dying because of him, which is another flag. Look at the title of this chapter, it's another foreshadowing that All Might may die in the future. As Deku is looking over the city, the 5th user Banjo says how society has gone backwards. The days where they didn't have any room to breathe from all the constant vigilante profiling has returned. It's as if they went back in time. Now remember, back in the day, All for One had a bigger grasp on society than now, but due to the jailbreak and the League of Villains, as we saw in chapter 306, people are taking up arms to defend themselves and becoming vigilante. Even in this chapter, we see how scared the civilians are against the Fox Girl. Not to mention the borders to Japan are now closed to the rest of the world. Everything has gone back to the dark days of the past. The 5th continues mentioning Shigaraki, Darby, the Nomu, the League of Villains, how they still don't have a clue on where the League could be hiding and what they are plotting. That's why there's so much imperative on Deku being alone, as he does not want All Might or any of the other characters to die, because they don't have a solid plan yet until he masters One for All. They are all in the dark. The Vestiges saw how Shigaraki with All for One's quirk wouldn't even be defeated with Aizawa and Endeavor working together. That's how OP Shigaraki has become. So they come to the conclusion that it's all riding on Deku's shoulders. He is the only one who stands a chance against Shigaraki with the power of One for All. Now I'm passing the video on to Yusuf, as he will explain the last half of the chapter.
Okay, so we then cut back to the continuation of the flashback in chapter 305, where Deku was talking to the Vestiges in his dreams. This is when the 1st user goes back to the 2nd and 3rd users who are facing the wall to cooperate with them and help them defeat All for One. All the Vestiges looks up to these two seeking a response, but there is nothing. The 5th then breaks the silence by screaming at Deku to get used to all the new quirks, especially Danger Sense and Smoke, as they prove useful in dodging Shigaraki's attacks. Because remember guys, if Shigaraki touches you, you are decayed. But at this point, the 3rd user finally chimes in, reminding the 1st on how they came from the harshest era of history, back when All for One was at his peak and about to dominate the whole world. He was so powerful that the people who were being dominated weren't even aware of the oppression, which is kind of like a throwback to our own society. When powerful, corrupt organizations run things, the mass majority of people don't even know. For example, the Bilderberg Group and their meeting. We are all products of our own environment. One could argue behind the scenes we are being socially engineered to make a profit for those who truly control things. This relates back to All for One, as he was under the shadows controlling how society was to be managed and how the general public should view morality and what truly even makes a villain. Anyways, at that point the 3rd revealed that the 2nd user was their leader, or it seems. The leader, the 2nd user, was so scared of the future, so they pushed on, which took everything they had working together, pushed back against All for One. At this point, we finally get to witness the 2nd user speak for the very first time. And we also get a bonus, a revelation of the 1st user's name, Yuichi. Now last time we were able to decipher the 4th user's quirk from his name, N, as N in kanji means smoke, and we later found out that that's also his quirk. But with the 1st user, Yoichi means first son. We know that he was younger than All for One, so more than likely Horikoshi was trying to elaborate on how all the users of One for All are like a family, and Yoichi is the first son from it. There is also the fact that his name follows the naming convention for the order of users, like Daigoro sounds like 5, Go in Japanese, Nana being 7th, Yagi being the 8th, and etc. Yoichi has Ichi representing the number 1. But coming back to the second user, he mentioned how Yoichi should know best on how many lives they had to sacrifice just so they could stop his brother, and that at the end of any battle, it's either a win or a loss. So the second clearly lived a life of war, witnessing more death than any man should. Even though Deku had his fair share of losses when compared to the second, who grew up in a near dystopian society with humans just getting accustomed to the new quirk era, laws and regulation might not have even been a concrete thing. This even goes back to Banjo's comment on the rise of vigilantes, as the ordinary man had to intervene to stop the wrongdoers. So the second user had to lead his people in the most dire situations, and after hearing that Deku wants to save his arch nemesis seems ridiculous and unrealistic to the point where he and the third user will have trouble standing behind. Deku's ideology is too optimistic and risky. However, to address this concern, Yoichi reminds the second that yes, Deku's ideals are delusional, but that the second saved his arch nemesis, referring to himself. Yes guys, we learned that Yoichi, after being locked up by All For One and given the stockpiling quirk, the second user along with the third rescued him. Now even though Yoichi wasn't really the second's arch nemesis, the fact that he was All For One's brother and in his camp, the second took a chance to trust Yoichi and give him a helping hand. This act initiated a chain of successes for One For All. Yoichi makes it a point to mention that nothing would have started if the second didn't offer his help, and Yoichi calls the second out, saying the reason he mentioned the past is because he knew this. It's likely that deep down, the second knows Deku's like him and realizes that he failed against All For One, making him feel that Deku might fail too with the way he's thinking.
Mission failed. We'll get him next time.
The second then asks Yoichi for some reassurance if Deku will be able to stop All For One and save the day. Yoichi says yes, and that One For All will never bow down to his brother. There then seemed to be a cut-off to this conversation where the first was about to add some important information that would stop Deku from winning. Guys, I don't know why they do this, but I would assume that Yoichi would say something like this: but if Deku doesn't get yours and the third user's help, then you won't have a chance. Well, something along those lines. We still don't know what this dude's quirk is, but looking at his design, it might be something similar to Bakugo. He is wearing gauntlets after all, so maybe he can blast out lasers or something. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What is this dude's power? And what about the third user? What is his power? But the chapter then ends with all of the vestiges behind Deku pushing him forwards, telling him that they are going to go full speed. Now guys, it's not clear which vestige was the one speaking to Deku, but we know from this panel that the second user does seem to be on board. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Make sure you smash that like button, ding that notification bell so you are on the same page as the rest of the community with our videos. But till then guys, I'll catch you lot next time.